This is going to yet again raise the concern about FAA staffing, air traffic control staffing. There has been this talk about maybe staff cuts at the FAA as a part of President Trump's effort to trim down the federal workforce. This is going to feed into all of these recent incidents, and the safety of the total air traffic system is going to be very much a part of the conversation.
The left-wing media is already accusing Trump of being a cause of this airline crash. But what's really to blame? Joining me now is Scott Pattillo, retired commercial airline pilot, and Kyle Bailey, aviation expert and former FAA safety team representative. Kyle, I got to ask you, do the potential cuts to the FAA and other parts of the federal government have anything to do with what's going on right now?
From what I see at this point, they have zero to do with this accident. It's not a matter of staffing. They had nothing to do with this at all. I could tell you that right now.
So, Scott, I realize that it's pretty impossible to tell from just this dramatic footage what happened, but you have a wing that is completely sheared off, and you have 40-mile-an-hour winds, as Eric Shawn reported. Can you give us any sort of indication as to what you think might have, what are the range of possibilities of what might have happened here?
Certainly, Charlie. There's a number of things that come to mind. Landing in a crosswind on a low-wing airplane like this, you gotta nail everything just right. It's a little bit of a challenge, but when you add icy runways, blowing snow across the runway into the equation, it becomes very tricky. Experienced pilots that do this day in and day out have got a little bit of an edge, and we're aware of what's going on with the aircraft. You can never give up on it. If the pilot was unstable as he's coming down on the approach, and I'm not saying that he was, but if he were, then that adds complexity to the equation as well. If his sink rate is high, if his airspeed is fast as he's coming down, the controls that he's going to put in on normally will act slightly different, and it could over-exaggerate the flight control surfaces, making it quite easy to catch a wing. Once he lands, the game's not over. He's got to continue to fly that airplane all the way down the end of the runway. If he relaxes or comes off at all, there's a good chance the wind gusting like that is going to catch a wing and cause the wing to hit the ground, which could cartwheel the airplane and put it on its back just like it did. So I know it's too early to tell. I don't believe wake turbulence was an issue because it was a A319 that landed ahead of them, which would not create enough wake to flip that airplane. So I think wake turbulence is ruled out. I think they're going to end up looking at the pilots. And I agree with what Kyle says. It's ludicrous to blame DOGE and President Trump on this. The controllers up in Canada are not even FAA. They're the Canadian controllers. So very, very different situation up there.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting point and an important one, I think. Earlier today, Kyle, Eric Swalwell, Congressman Eric Swalwell, decided to blame Trump by saying, I think this is on maybe on X somewhere. He says, Trump is president. President Trump is in charge of air safety. All crashes are Trump's fault. Does that kind of thing help if you're trying to navigate a crash like this and figure out what the hell happened?
You know, it doesn't help. And like your previous guest just pointed out, they were in the Canadian airspace system. So nothing to do with Donald Trump, nothing to do with the way the FAA is run. It's not the FAA. One thing I want to say, the FAA in Canada, tremendous aircraft certification requirements. The outcome of this crash with not a single fatality really indicates how superior the regulation is when it comes to building these airplanes. They have 16G seats in that airplane and also breakaway wings. We haven't seen those in airplanes 40, 50 years ago. And that attests how great the system works, that everybody walked away from this. That's what the airplane was designed for. And if there is, a glimmer of light here, is that everybody walked away. And obviously there were a few injuries, but the system worked. With everybody walking away. And we really have to applaud the way these airplanes are built and the certification that the FAA and Canadian authorities mandate in the building of these airplanes.